Hello, friends. We're back with the podcast. So last week we discussed about Bangladesh, the history, and uh, the development that Bangladesh had within the last sort of couple of hundreds of years. So today we're going to actually continue with the same subject because it's a vast subject, and as you know, there's so much to be learned and so much to be heard. So I'm going to welcome Zakir Bhai again, Zakir Hussain. So just for those who haven't seen the first part, he's a student of history, um, and he's also a civil servant in London. So Zakir Bhai, welcome back.
Thank you very much for having me, Rahul Bhai.
No problem. So yeah, so basically, shall we continue with the second part? Obviously, there's so much to cover, and obviously we'll be coming back like every now and then to the history of this because this is something very important to the Bangladeshi community living in the UK and even in Bangladesh. So please, over to you, Zakir Bhai. Um, if you can just continue from where you left off last week.
Absolutely, not a problem. So yes, so we were talking about Alexander the Great and when he came over to India and the reasons why he didn't want to cross over to Bangladesh. And these are historical records from the Greeks and later on the Romans as well, showing the strength of the area of Bengal. Now, the area that they were referring to mostly was Bangladesh and West Bengal. Those were the areas that were really the sort of power. So history at the time of when it was recorded at the time of Alexander the Great, they recorded the strength of Bangladesh and the army and the agriculture, and it was a very, very rich place. And when we move after the Alexander the Great, the Romans, and we see the writings of the Romans, there are a lot of sources which actually say that the Roman traders were told by their women that we want the silk of dhaka. They named the actual muslin, the silk muslin, dhaka, because that's where most of the muslin was produced. So these muslins were known all throughout the world. And in the first century BCE and the first century AD, this is when the Romans were very powerful. So this would have been after Alexander the Great was Greek. So after the Greek, it was the Romans who took over. And the Roman sources say the same thing as well. The Romans took back coins you can find in different parts of Italy in the museums, actual coins which were minted in Bangladesh.
Wow.
That's they took back. And the spices and many other things. So when you look at these great empires and their historians and what they say about Bangladesh, it's unfortunate that we, as Bangladeshis, we don't know that. No. So if we do not know the wealth of our country, our contributions to the world, how the world has viewed us for, since time began, we unfortunately just look at the last 200 years or 250 years since the British. And naturally, it's since the British came and they wrote about history, they made it as if, there isn't anything in Bangladesh and it was always, backwards. But again, when you look at the sources from Roman times, it shows very clearly that Bangladesh was indeed very rich. And also another thing they said as well is the systems that they had in place. They were awestruck as to how civilized and how the transport system that they actually built as well around the waterways. And for the Romans, they would look up to at that time they would call it Hind. Yeah, Hind basically meant most of India, but more the Bangladesh and the West Bengal side. Because if you look at it in terms of the waterways, where would the ships land? They would either go into Chittagong if they were to go to say China or Burma, or they'll come straight into the Straits of say Barisal and go into Dhaka. So those were the waterways. So in terms of trading, when they mean Hind, they actually mean the parts of Hind that they reach with water, as in through their ships. Remember, the Romans never came to trade overland, so they would not have crossed Pakistan or India from that side. It was always through the waterways. So that, first century, second century BC and AD, you see how powerful, how rich Bengal was. Then if you come to the Pala Empire, this is the time where our prophet, beloved prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was born, he gave the message. And one fact I found out recently was that there was actually a masjid that was built in Shahjatpur, somewhere around Dhaka. So where the Meghna, Jamuna, the Padma rivers go. So what would happen is this would have been the Sahaba, because for the Sahaba called Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, who was actually younger in age to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he was his uncle in terms of relations. Some would say, he was buried in China. We know he went to China, but we're not sure whether he was actually buried there. They've got actually a tomb or a masjid called the Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas Masjid. But he would not have gone the other way around through the Straits of Malacca, through Indonesia. They would have come to Bangladesh and gone through this way. So it actually makes sense that a masjid was built in Shahjatpur, because that is very close to the waterways. So the Sahabas would have passed through Bangladesh to go to China. So they would have gone through the waterways, stopped at where the waterways end, and the rest of the journey they would have made foot or through, whatever they took, the camels or other animals that they would have had on the ships to allow them to travel further.
And I suppose, Zakir bhai, this is one of the main reasons why we see a lot of the countries who used to have ports and riverways were very developed compared to landlocked countries. So that's a very good sign that, or good evidence that Bangladesh was doing well. And we know from history that, at least from 2000 years back, that Bangladesh, was trading with the world, yeah, it's very interesting. Do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, so the reason I wanted to sort of pause there is so if you had any sort of questions to ask me on that point. So now we're in the era of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we know that some of the Sahabas would have traveled through Bangladesh. And then when we move, as I said, I'm going very briefly because, as you said, there will be times in future podcasts where we come back to this. So it's not just a case of we're just running through and we're not going to come back. So if I was to just move to the time of, say, the 10th century, so there was a lot of Buddhist influence. A lot of Bangladeshi people are not aware that Gopala, he was actually a Buddhist king. But most of his ministers were Hindu. So therefore, after however many years, the Hindu kingdoms were able to topple the Buddhist kingdom. So a lot of people are not
and apparently, Zakir bhai, I don't know if you are actually aware. Like I was in Cox's Bazar 2 years ago, and I went to this Buddhist temple, and apparently it's a more than 2,000-year-old temple, and apparently it's the most oldest temple. That's what the guy told us at the time. So I don't know how true that is, but I was taken back actually, to think
could
that.
Well be.
Yeah.
It could well be, Ruhul Bhai, because Chittagong, Burma, they're Buddhist areas. So if you were to tell me that there was a Buddhist temple in Sylhet, then I would probably question. But the Bandarban and the Chittagong, the Cox's, that side, close to Burma, absolutely, it could well be 2,000 years old, because Buddhism was prevalent there. In terms of the rest of Bangladesh, it's as far as I understand, under the Pala dynasty, that the actual state was the leader was a Buddhist, but in terms of his ministers, they were mostly Hindu. The reason why I mentioned about Buddhism is that there was a person called Atish Dipankar, who was born around 980 and he passed away about 1054. He is known as the second Buddha, and he's from Dhaka. So after Buddha, he's seen as the second most important person in Buddhism, and he's from Dhaka. So if you were to travel to Tibet, I found out from a TEDx a talk that if you go to Tibet and you mention that you're from Bangladesh, they feel a lot of reverence towards you because
Okay.
Pankar, yes. And remember, there are various branches of Buddhism. So one of the branches was actually started, or his followers are still alive, as in, since his time till now, there's a different branch which actually comes from him. And he's from Bangladesh.
Right. And also, Zakir, if I can just come in, like, I heard from other people, I haven't actually come across any evidence, but apparently, Molibi Bazar in Sylhet, yeah,
Yeah.
the region Molibi Bazar, the district. Apparently, the Lord Krishna, the Hindu god, he was born there, and as a result, a lot of Hindus from around India and around the world come for a pilgrimage. I don't know if you are actually aware of
I
that.
I actually thank you for that. I'll actually
Mm.
look into that.
Please do.
I wasn't yeah, I wasn't actually aware of that, but what I was aware of, I found from different sources, the Pandavas and the Kauravas and the Pandavas,
Yeah,
during the Mahabharata, yeah, the two
yeah, yeah,
families
yeah.
fighting. So according to the Mahabharata and certain texts from that time, they had one of the families had five brothers. Yeah, I think they were the Pandavas. Yeah, and
Right.
the middle one, Arjun.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently he got married in Sylhet, Hobbygonj. Actual,
Okay.
yeah, actual reference. They say in Sylhet, Srihatta is what they would call it
Yeah,
back in
yeah,
those days. So that area of Sylhet, Molibazan, in that area, the Mahabharata does actually mention. So Lord, they say Lord Krishna could well have been. So again, because not much history or historical books survive from that period. But when you look at the Mahabharata and the indications, the part of Sylhet was very active and played an active role in the Mahabharata wars, or even making alliances. So
yeah.
why would Arjun, the third brother from the Pandava family, which is a very powerful, prominent family, why would he go and want to marry in Sylhet? Because the powerful marry the powerful.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
So again, I will delve more into, and hopefully, following podcast, I can share a bit more. But thank you for that. I will definitely look into that.
Mm.
They say that according to them, Lord Krishna was born in Molibazar. It could well be, because if you look at other evidence for Mahabharata, a lot of activities happened in Sylhet.
Yeah, and another question I'd like to ask you, like, I've been wondering for some time, like, obviously we find that a lot of mystical poets tend to be from the area of Greater Sylhet, especially Sunamganj, which you and I come from.
Yeah.
That is where Sunamganj. I mean, what is the sort of, why do you think that is? And what is the sort of reason? I've never come across it.
I mean,
Especially like so Hassan Raja comes to mind. I'm sure you know about Hassan Raja,
yeah.
man of history. Um, I mean, do you know, why that is?
I mean, I often wondered. To be honest, I haven't really researched into it, but just as a whole, I think number one, as Muslims, we believe Allah chooses different places for different things.
Hmm.
Now, Sylhet as a whole, 360 awliya of Allah coming all the way from different lands to come here. That in itself is a blessing.
Hmm.
In terms of Shunam Gonj, I think it's just one of those where, as I said, I'm sure there's a logical reason as to why they're attracted to Shunam Gonj, Hassan Raja, and many others. But again, that's something I will try and look into and see, if there's any reasons,
Correlation,
so
correlation.
logical reasons as to why they would be attracted to Shunam Gonj.
Yeah. Yeah. So carry on, Zagrebi.
So again, so I was going to go back to some Atish Dipankar. So you've got that whole strand of Buddhism from a man who was born in Dhaka,
Right.
Bangladesh. If we then move on to the first, if you want to call it, the sightings of actual Islamic invasion into Bangladesh, it was done by Bakhtiyar Khilji in 1204.
Right.
But he came from the Rangpur, Dinajpur, that side. So he didn't come all the way to Sylhet.
Right. Okay.
So in 1204, and Bakhtiyar Khilji is actually from the Delhi Sultanate.
Right.
It's a long history of slaves who were part of the army, and then they themselves became independent rulers. So that we'll probably talk about it in another
But
episode.
is it Bakhtiar Khilji like originally from Afghanistan?
Yes, so that's what they said. They say it's originally from Afghanistan, but because back in those days you had many different dynasties. They used to have many different slaves, and a lot of them would go into the army and they would rise up. So he could have come from Afghanistan, but his route was probably from somewhere in Eastern Europe where they took slaves. So
Right.
that's another point as well. A lot of the slaves back in those days were actually white.
Right.
So a lot of people don't know that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
they would go
Yeah.
to in a place like Ukraine and those sort of areas, Eastern Europe. They
Yeah,
would
it's very interesting. Yeah,
find slaves.
not sure a lot of people would know this. Even during the Egyptian era, when Egypt was like sort of, one of the most
Powerful.
civilized societies, um, as far as I know, they used to have like slaves from Eastern Europe at that time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's very
And the
interesting.
funny part was, you mentioned that back in those days, it was cool to be dark shaded because the
Mm.
Egyptians, remember, you always look to, so you would have the ones who were fair skinned trying
Mm.
to make themselves darker
Yeah.
to look like
Yeah.
the Egyptians. So again,
Yeah.
it would,
Yeah.
people follow power.
Because
That's what
the
it is.
dark-skinned people were like learned at the time, and they were like
Absolutely. If you look
civilized.
at the Bani, if you
Yeah.
look at the Bani Israel, they weren't black. They were, either tanned or slightly light skinned.
Mm.
Yeah. Whereas
Okay.
the rulers, the
Yeah.
Egyptians were black.
Right.
So we'll go into that another day.
All the
But yeah,
time.
absolutely, what you just said there.
Mm.
Back in those days, yes, they used to have slaves who were Europeans. So going back to Bakhtiyar Khilji, so he came in, and again, due to internal conflicts,
Mm.
he didn't last for too long. And then in 1303, most accurate records say 1303 is when Shah Jalal Rahmatullah came with an army, as in he followed the army, came to Sylhet, and conquered that part of Sylhet. Now, Gorgavinda, we know, Raja Gorgavinda. Some say he wasn't actually a big sort of chief. He was just a chieftain. He wasn't actually a ruler of a big kingdom. So Sylhet at the time, if we look at Sylhet, so where Gorgavinda was, his kingdom wasn't that big. You had other tribes or bigger kingdoms
Right.
around Sylhet as well.
Okay.
So with Gorgavinda, after he was defeated in 1303, Shah Jahan stayed there until 1347. And the interesting part is Ibn Battuta, the famous traveler, Ibn Battuta, he
Right.
actually traveled. So he went to Indonesia, Malaysia, those sort of areas, and he went specifically to Sylhet to meet
Right.
Shah Jahan. And
Right.
in his books, his observation, he says, I saw a man who was tall and thin and fair, more on the fair skin side. So Shah Jahan, according to according to Ibn Battuta, he was a fair-skinned man, more on the fair-skinned side, tall. And the interesting part he said was that surrounding Shah Jahan were strong foreigners.
Wow.
So strong foreigners were surrounding Shah Jahan. He was in Sylhet. So what
Right.
is this saying? That the people at that time were of strong stature.
Right.
So this is what Ibn Battuta said.
Yeah, that's very
Um,
interesting. Yes, I did come across a video where
yeah.
it was a memoir of Ibn Battuta, and he does mention Bangladesh and Sylhet. It's very
Um, Also, there's another traveler by the name of Zen He, a
right.
Chinese traveler.
Okay.
Again, glowing tributes to Bangladesh. If
Right.
you look at Vasco da Gama and others who
Mm.
actually traveled before the British went there, when they
Mm.
would travel, they could not believe their eyes as to how civilized, advanced Dhaka and the surrounding areas were.
Right. Okay.
And this was only 400 years ago. And you mentioned in the last episode, Hamza Yusuf, one of our
Mm.
scholars,
Mm.
mentioning in the 16th century,
Yeah.
Bangladesh had the highest GDP in the world.
Exactly.
Per
Exactly.
capita, the average Bangladeshi was richer than,
Mm.
was the richest in the world. But
Exactly.
how much of that do
Something
we
to
know?
be really proud of, honestly. I mean, I don't think many Bengalis actually know this.
And we need to appreciate it as well. I think
Yeah,
if that was
I think
our,
most of all, there needs to be an awareness, in the community or around the world, and especially parents need to,
yes,
teach these children, the history.
absolutely. And
Because
this is
only
where,
then like children will start uh, when you have pride for a certain country and its culture. Only then you will be interested in going to see that place, and I think
absolutely,
a lot of the youngsters, they see Bangladesh as a poor nation, deprived nation, why go there? There's so many issues and problems. But I think it's a beautiful country personally, with a lot of rich history, so much to be proud of. And I think gradually if parents start teaching their children and taking the
Absolutely.
children to holiday in Bangladesh, only then, we can actually reignite the Bangladeshi what's the word?
Absolutely. I couldn't
You know,
agree more, Rahul, by
right.
since we've done our podcast, as in the last one, again, I've been doing a lot more research. South Korea,
Yeah,
they actually sent, before they got their boom and now we see them for a developed country,
yeah,
what they should do, they should send their brightest outside to gain knowledge. But what they did also is made sure that they come back and transfer
yeah.
the knowledge to the country. They never lost culture, they never lost their language.
Okay.
So they, even though they had two or three generations of
Yeah,
people working outside, getting the knowledge coming
yeah.
back, they
Okay.
never forgot their language. And I think this is where maybe our weakness is. A lot of our
Mm,
children can't speak Bengali.
mm,
So
yeah,
maintaining the language gives them, it's like a string which attaches them to Bangladesh.
exactly.
And if you
And
cut that string,
why
sorry,
wouldn't you? Like, the Bangla language is the sweetest language, recognized by
I
UNESCO.
just think we don't appreciate it.
Um,
That's the
yeah.
bottom line. We don't
Same here.
appreciate it for some reason.
Same here. I mean, personally, when I was young, I was fascinated like by Bangla. A lot of people in Bangladesh, when I go to Bangladesh, when I speak Bengali, they find it very odd that a person who grew up in England, speaks so well in Bangla. And it's because, I found Bangla so nice. I was fascinated, and why not, I mean, no wonder UNESCO recognized Bangla as a sweetest language in the world, and
And also,
not only that, I think Bangla, when we had the Greater Bengal, when Shirjudullah was
yeah,
the emperor, um, it was such a big area of India, Northeast India. Like he had, like you mentioned the other day, Assam, Tripura, Bihar, Orissa,
yeah,
West Bengal. It was one Greater Bengal, and even now, in the Indian subcontinent, after Hindi, it's actually Bengali that is the
yeah,
most spoken language.
no,
It's
absolutely.
very
And
yeah,
it's interesting you say that. Again, the language also, if you look at the Nobel laureates for literature, it was Rabindranath Tagore who received it.
yeah. Yeah, but
You know,
by the
for,
way, Zakir bhai, can we just pay tribute to all the people who died during the language movement in
I was
Bangladesh
going to say that as
in
well. I was just going to briefly,
1952? A lot of so I went to a program yesterday evening, just to pay tribute. Today is the 21st of
21st, Ekushe
February.
February.
So today is actually officially the International Language Day, which again UNESCO recognized because of Bangladesh.
And again,
Yeah.
this is the only country where people died for their language.
Exactly, and gained its independence because of the language
Absolutely.
movement, So this is something which is very, very
Unique,
unique around the world,
unique
That shows how proud we are of our heritage and the language.
language. People are willing to give their lives for the language.
Exactly,
Again,
exactly.
we should
So,
cherish, absolutely, we need to cherish our
yeah,
language.
exactly. So may Allah actually, grant all the, martyrs,
Amin, amin.
heaven. Obviously, as we know from Hadith, if people die for the country, they are martyrs. If I'm wrong, correct me if I'm
Yeah,
wrong,
I mean,
Zakir.
yeah, with that one, yeah, again, as in, obviously, in terms of how authentic that is,
Hmm.
that's probably for another day. But yeah,
Okay.
absolutely,
So,
they died for what they believed in, and they died for the nation,
yeah,
in effect,
yeah.
so that the language and the people can live on.
Yeah, whatever the reason, I think, from my understanding, if you die, for the nation, if you die to protect your nation, you're a
Yes,
martyr,
protect. Yes,
you know.
protect. Absolutely, if they did it again for protection,
Yeah,
absolutely. That, yeah,
yeah. So that's what it is. So yeah, I mean, and the good thing is at least Bengalis around the world tend to celebrate this day, and remember the martyrs, and it's a good thing.
absolutely. Thank you, because
Not
I didn't
many,
actually think about it
not
in the
many
morning.
cultures or countries tend to, celebrate all these, you know, events.
Eventful, yeah,
But we Bengalis, we tend to celebrate our, like, important events wherever we are around the world.
yeah,
So this is something to be
yeah,
really proud about.
absolutely.
But
I
I think
agree.
it's a pity. Like, obviously, when I was growing up in this country, we had to have Bengali classes, whether at a maktab or at home.
Yes.
There was a period I was learning Bangla at maktab, and then there was a period,
Bangla classes.
yeah,
Bangla
Bangla
classes.
classes, and then even at home, there was another period where my dad actually employed a
My dad taught me as well.
Bengali teacher to learn Bengali. That's how I learned Bengali. I never, I grew up here. I never, I didn't grow up in Bangladesh. So this is the thing that is missing, I think, with Bengalis living in the UK and outside also.
Yeah.
Uh,
I fully agree, and I think we need to reconnect with
yeah,
our root as a, you're a parent, I'm a parent, and I think our
yeah.
generation has a
I
big
mean, I
part to
have
play.
to shout out to this organization, local organization, Townless. They're based in Townless. It's called Gulab Ganj Educational Cultural Trust. They've actually just started, Bangla classes in Harkness Center. Uh,
Good,
I think last month. So kudos
big
to
shout
them,
out. Yes, very good.
we have so many organizations like in Town Hamlets alone, in one borough. We have more than, I think, 100 organizations, Bengali-led organizations. And can you imagine, at least half of them were to have, like, they used to do that back in the days, but not anymore. Obviously, we have financial constraints. We don't have funding as we used to do, back in the days. There used
Yeah.
to be abundance of funding from the council to the national government, even the European Social Fund. So that's one of the issues that or challenges a lot of the organizations tend to face. So that's why they've had to cut down on a lot of activities. And yeah, so but there are ways to go around it. Like, obviously people can, I suppose a lot of the organizations can actually do fundraise. They can fundraise from the community, from the public, and then, carry out these activities,
Or possibly merge with one another, so that rather than having so many different separate organizations,
yeah,
you have consolidated organizations, and the staff members can all work together.
yeah,
So yeah, absolutely, I think it should be a more consolidated effort, whereby if you have 100 different organizations all trying to provide the same thing, what we don't want is for competition to be of such a level that it doesn't then meet the requirements of what the organization started for, which is
exactly.
teaching.
Yeah.
So yes, yeah, absolutely, it's good to have those organizations. I think, as you said, possibly a bit more organized or focused attention to the main aims and objectives of their organizations. But it's good to know that they're there. They'll get there.
I
It's
think
good to know that.
Bangladesh really needs to sort of create a brand awareness around the world. Only then, people will be interested in learning about Bangladesh and its culture, even the Bengalis who are living abroad. Like we see on social media, on YouTube, Facebook, and we see, ads on buses. We see billboards like visit Canada, visit Morocco,
Yeah,
visit Turkey, things like
Bangladesh.
that. Yeah, yeah, we need to
The
uh,
promotions,
have
yeah,
a brand. Uh, I think in Bangladesh, they've started, sort of promoting Bangladesh, but I think there should be more effort. We see recently, I don't know if you've been following a lot of like international YouTubers. They've started going to Bangladesh. They've
they're
been,
going. Yeah, I've seen.
yeah,
Yeah, I've seen. I've seen.
which we never used to see even like few years back, honestly. The
Yeah,
only top like YouTubers who do vlogging, video
yeah.
vlog, they go to Bangladesh, and a lot of it is like a positive, which is a good thing. But then again, just go, yeah, we've got about another sort of 8 minutes before
Okay.
program
Yeah.
finishes, so
And
we'll just carry on.
on that, I know of actual American families, white American families, who've
Yeah.
actually moved to Bangladesh to live.
Wow. Wow.
Actually, they said, they want the kids to grow up there as well.
Yeah.
And when they were interviewing the children,
Mhm.
the child is only about 10, but he started becoming very emotional when talking about the friends and the love that he's received in Bangladesh,
Yeah.
in the Bangladeshi school. Very welcome. So they said for the
Yeah.
foreseeable future, they will be staying there. So I think sometimes we as families, we don't have to move there permanent, but to go there more often, slowly create
Exactly.
that bond, I think is very
Yeah.
important for us.
Yeah. And I suppose like India, like we would have had a lot of people, non-Bengalis moving into Bangladesh, settling down. Like a lot of Brits, I'm sure you are aware. Like if they were to move out of UK, they would go to places like Spain, Australia.
Yeah,
And now what I'm seeing, because I follow a lot of vloggers on YouTube, apparently Thailand is a very
yeah,
popular destination. And the reason is, the infrastructure is really good. Yeah.
yeah.
The healthcare is good. Housing is good. So we need to get to that level before Bangladesh can actually promote itself, for people to come and invest. Yeah. In contrast to like Thailand and India, we're not getting as many tourists, as we should. Um, so, like we know in India, like places like Sikkim. I don't know if you've heard of
Yeah.
Sikkim.
Yes,
Just
yes.
north of
I have.
Bangladesh. It's not very far.
Yes.
Like from I think Rangpur, it's about 100 miles. Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
very scenic and very beautiful area.
Yes.
There's
Mountainous.
Yeah, very mountainous, and in the 80s and the 90s, a lot of the Indian movies used to be shot there,
Yeah.
because of this scenery. And there's a big like UK expat community,
Crazy.
in
Okay.
places like say Sikkim is one of the like, top spots,
Wow.
Sikkim.
Okay.
Then there are others. There are different other spots in India. We could I suppose we could have a similar um, you know, um, if Bangladesh can actually develop infrastructure, develop healthcare, develop housing, then we could have people coming and investing and even living in Bangladesh.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, we've got the resources there. If you think about it, you've got St. Martin Islands. You've got many other different islands as well.
Yes.
Also, you've got the aquamarine, as in there's so much on the Bay of Bengal in terms of, if you want to go to tourism, many other things that
Yeah.
can be developed. If you just look
Exactly.
at Cox's Bazar itself, the beach, you look at Bandarban, you look at Rangamati, and all this, the Kaptai Lake, and many places in Sylhet as well as other parts of the country, but mainly so Sylhet and Chittagong area. The natural beauty is there, but you don't see like it being advertised. You don't see groups going there. So I think, as you said, the infrastructure and a move, an actual push from the government to promote it
Mm.
and actually value what they've got there. So
Mm.
I think it's a lot to do with planning and actually giving tourism a bigger place in the government of Bangladesh and seeing it as a priority. I think the ready-made garments is the main focus, and it's been the main focus for a long time. But I do feel our government in Bangladesh needs to.
Yeah.
I
Funny you
have
should
seen
say
clips.
that,
Yeah,
Zakir, but there was a recent study, and in that study showed like Bangladesh needs to diversify. Bangladesh relies on solely on like garments for 80% of its like foreign
yeah,
income. So you know what tourism will do? Tourism is one of those industries. It's the most easiest industry, and it's an industry where you need to, if you invest £1, you'll get like £1,000 in return. It's an industry without a roof, and tourism will bring in billions of dollars to Bangladesh, and it will
absolutely.
create like
And
thousands of jobs. And this is something I think Bangladesh needs to really work on, as a priority, you know.
I think
And
the potential is loads of potential.
yeah,
It's full of potential.
yeah,
But if the potential is not utilized in the proper manner, then that
exactly,
potential it just remains a potential. It's never actualized.
exactly. And obviously, alongside not just tourism, like we need to like, for instance, India. If you look at India and what they sell abroad, they
Yeah,
sell a variety of stuff.
yeah,
Whereas for Bangladesh, it's just mainly it's like the garments and then fish products, and that's it really. The others don't even come into equation. The percentage. If you look at the percentage, um, so in the 80s it used to be jute. So
yeah.
that's something we can maybe work on. But
Revive the muslin trade, I would say. The muslin,
yeah,
the
yeah,
famous
muslin.
muslin.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can also revive the muslin trade. You know,
I think
that's
it's the
something.
planning. I think it's moving away from. Sometimes I just feel again with my sort of research, and I would say probably limited knowledge of how the Bangladeshi government works. But the potential is there. I just feel that they want to stay with what's already tried and tested, which is ready-made garments, and
Mm.
they're in some ways sort of satisfied with what they have, but the potential is not being realized because they feel, okay, we're a developing nations, we're making money, we're making steady progress, but progress could be a lot faster if they
Exactly.
take these. Yeah,
Yeah. And yeah, I mean there are pros and cons to everything. Like obviously Bangladesh, one of the advantages, like it's got a very large population, which the country can utilize when it comes to like economic, development. It's a small country in size, so again, compared to a large country like India, it's easier to manage, easier to develop. You need less budget. You know, it's like if you have a one-bed flat and a five-bedroom house, which is easier to actually,
Yeah,
develop the one-bed
absolutely.
flat. It's like that. So yeah, hopefully, I think we'll see Bangladesh,
I would very
becoming
much like to see the potentials being actualized and realized. Each time I go to Bangladesh, I just see potentials everywhere.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
outside of India, Zakir bhai, Bangladesh is already a major hub for education. Like a lot of the um, so if the education was so bad, people wouldn't have come from other countries. Like, for instance, like the neighboring countries like Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Nepal,
yeah,
and other countries, even from Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, people come to Bangladesh.
people from Pakistan, Kashmir, a lot of Kashmiri students.
Oh yeah, I have
The
to. Can
school,
I just mention this? Yeah, Kashmiri students. Yeah, the Bhutanese government.
yes, I was just going to say that.
My
Yeah,
God, I was listening to the Prime Minister, and he actually got his doctorate from Mymensingh
yes,
Medical College, and he
MBBS. Just
speaks fluent Bengali. Not only that, I was so impressed. Like his whole cabinet apparently was educated in Bangladesh, like graduate level. Yeah,
yeah.
can you imagine? It
So
shows
again,
like Bangladesh does have a lot of potential. It's just that it needs to market itself,
yeah, I think the
position itself.
managing, yeah, the
Yeah,
managing of it
yeah,
is where I think the focus needs to be.
exactly. Yeah. So yeah, even in Sylhet, Shahjalal University, the Science and
Yeah,
Technology University, we have a lot of foreigners there. And the one that is opening in Sunamganj, it's going to be called, I think, Bangabandhu Science and
I heard, yeah, I heard.
Science and Technology University. They're already actually publicizing this abroad. So we will get a lot of foreigners studying at and it's actually a very prestigious university, Shah Jalal and the one in Sunamganj. The only district I know which doesn't have a medical college is Moli Bazar.
Oh, okay.
Hobiganj
Oh,
does have a medical college. Sylhet obviously has Shah Jalal, and Sunamganj has Bangabandhu Science and Technology College, and Molly needs a medical college. So yeah, I mean, education is the backbone of any nation. I think in
absolutely.
terms of education, what I've realized over the years recently that people have really, really put emphasis on education, like on a personal level. Parents are going out of the way to educate their kids because they've realized we live in a globalized society. We are no longer competing within the country. We're competing outside of the country. We're competing with the world. So we need to have the best of the best skills. That is a revolution that is, happening in Bangladesh. Whereas you wouldn't see this in neighboring countries like Burma, for instance, or
True.
Nepal or Bhutan. So for a small country, it just shows how, because we were a prosperous nation before, they say what goes round comes round. Bengalis are
Absolutely.
waking up, and they're very they have this business acumen. They want to do business. Young Bengalis are diversifying into different businesses. We even have our own version of Uber in Bangladesh. It's called Patal, and it's doing
And
pretty well. It's really competing against Uber, believe it or not.
there you go.
Yeah.
So again, a lot of things, as you just mentioned,